it's now been about 2 weeks since Book of Boba Fett wrapped up. And I thought it might be interesting to look back on the season a little bit by way of looking back on the scores out of 10 that we gave the episodes.
Ooh.
So I did some math.
I'm ready to go.
I did some math. And I've got here our scores and our average score that we gave the episode. I'm curious to see if y'all. I always feel weird when I say y'all. I'm not from the South.
It feels weird for me too.
It sounds weird coming out of my.
I put it in your mouth, literally.
Yeah, literally.
That was in the pre-show.
Yeah.
$1 a month.
So I want to see how you guys feel about the season now compared to how you felt about it as it was coming out. So, Ben, we're going to start with you.
Naturally.
And just to remind everybody, here are the scores that you gave the season. You gave Chapter 1, you gave it a 7 out of 10. Chapter 2, you gave a 9 out of 10. Chapter 3, 8 out of 10. Chapter 4, 9.5 out of 10. Chapter 5, 9 out of 10. Chapter 6, I bullied you into giving it a 10 out of 10.
So is that even a real score? Who knows?
And I did it exclusively so that I could be the only one not to give it 10 out of 10 out of 10. And then Chapter 7, you gave an 8 out of 10 for an average score of 8.64 out of 10.
Wow.
Now, on the last episode, after having seen the season finale, you also gave a score for the season as a whole. Do you remember what your score was, Ben?
I have no idea.
Well, I will tell you that amongst the three of us, there was the largest discrepancy between your average score and the score you gave the season.
Oh no!
Because again, you gave the season over an 8.5 as an 8.64. That was your average score, but the season as a whole, you gave a 7.
Oh, what?
For everybody listening,
No way.
Ben does not believe his own words.
Yeah, I'm just like, I guess it just goes to show, like, because I've talked about this. Okay, shout out to, I talked about this on IPC. I talked about this on like Jeff White invited me in High Function. Go listen to that. I talked about it on his show. Like 3 shows in a row, I talked about it. I think I gave varying opinions. If you like added all that up, it would probably be even wilder, to be honest.
So I don't know which do you feel though, Ben? Which score would you say or accurately reflects your feeling on the season?
Probably leaning towards an 8. Probably, it depends on like what I'm thinking about. Like if I'm thinking about, man, I really didn't like that, I'll just like, if I'm just like having those kind of thoughts, I'm that kind of mood, like that's where it is. But like generally speaking, like the farther I get away from something, the more I remember the positives of it. So that my opinion like generally improves on something the more I think about it in retrospect.
Yeah,
it's watching it.
It's that thing, absence makes the heart grow fonder in a sense. And it's sort of like when you get to the end of a season and you're in the sort of the heat of the moment where the finale maybe didn't do everything you wanted it to, you give it a little bit of a lower score than you would overall. But then now that we've put some distance in between then and now, you can you're now closer to your average score week to week because you're remembering the whole experience.
Exactly.
As opposed to just what you were feeling after the episode. In a sense, maybe it would be more fair to say your score for Chapter 7, to flip your score for Chapter 7 and your score for the season and give the Chapter 7 a 7 and give the season as a whole an 8. Maybe that might more accurately reflect where you were at in the moment. All right, now Chris, let's go to you. See how
you got to do this in Taco Bell sauce.
I don't have the conversion key in front of me, so you'll have to remind us. You'll have to do that yourself. Right. You have to do the conversion yourself. So for Chapter 1, you gave it a 7. Chapter 2, you gave it a 9. You guys gave the same scores for the first 2 episodes.
So that's like a mild and a hot.
Yeah. Chapter 3, you went back to a 7. Chapter 4, an 8. Chapter 5, 9. Chapter 6, 10. And Chapter 7, an 8. And so for an average score of 8.29. And on the final episode, talking about Chapter 7, you gave the season as a whole an 8 out of 10.
So, see?
So
There you
pretty
go.
close,
Yeah.
pretty close. You're pretty, you're pretty on the ball in terms of how you were feeling. You weren't feeling the dramatic mood swings of one Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
And that's because like my rating system is like extremely scientific, and it's like basically, is this as good as the movies? Is this worse than the movies, or is this better than the movies? That's literally my rating system. I just compare it to other Star Wars things and relatively put it up there. So like 9, and I've had that rating system since Cloak of Darkness, which was episode I think 9 of season 1 of the Clone Wars. Like because
way back.
because I remember watching that episode and seeing that fight between Ahsoka and Luminara and Asajj Ventress, and being like, wow, this was like as well done and choreographed as the lightsaber fights in the Star Wars movies. And from then on, I decided that meant it was a 9. And then if it wasn't quite up to par for there, if there were things that were left to be desired, it was an 8. And then as it got worse and worse, it would go down from there. And then when I watched Lair of Grievous, I remember saying, there's some aspects of this episode that expands upon the Star Wars movies. The horror elements of that episode were actually more intense than the horror elements in the Star Wars films. So that's why I gave it a 10 out of 10, because it was the first episode that I felt to expand the tone of the Star Wars universe. So that's what a 10 out of 10 means for me, is this is better than the films. And then basically the 11 out of 10, which is the elusive Diablo that Book of Boba Fett never got, would mean that it was actually better than something else that was a 10 out of 10. So it's like, this is not only better than the films, but it's better than something else that's better than the films, essentially.
There it is. So, all right. So now for myself, I'll just remind you all of what I scored, how I scored the season. I gave Chapter 1 a 6.5, Chapter 2 a 9, Chapter 3 a 7.5, Chapter 4 a 6, Chapter 5 an 8.5, Chapter 6 a 9.5, even though really I should have given that one a 10. And Chapter 7, I give it an 8.5 for an average of 7.93. Slipping just under the 8 out of 10. And my season score, 7.75. So,
I
right?
you were going to say 8.
No. Right in the...
You missed it.
Right in the...
You had to add the 0.5 because almost all your scores have 0.5 on them.
Yeah, because the score out of 10 doesn't properly, even though I came up with this system, I didn't come up with it, but I'm the one who started implementing it on our shows all the way back on the Clone Wars Strikes Back. I don't feel it gives enough space for nuance. You know, it doesn't quite capture, you know, the full range of emotions that one can have when watching a Star Wars thing. But that, honestly, that sounds about right. Like, for me, Book of Boba Fett as a whole, like, to me, for something to be like, I consider an 8 to be just like solid, you know, can't ask for anything more, but also theoretically it could have been better and could have been perfect, you know, sort of in that sort of spot. And I feel like Book of Boba Fett comes in just under that. I think it did need a little bit more. I think it did need to focus up a little bit. Now, so Ben, out of the three of us, you had the highest scores average overall, but you did not have the highest score average amongst the people on the shows each week, because the person who would have the highest average score would be if we took all of our guests and combined them into one person. because
sounds like a horror movie.
Because Jeff gave Chapter 1 an 8, Aubrey gave Chapter 2 a 10, Din gave Chapter 3 after some finagling an 8.5, Eric gave Chapter 4 an 8.5, Star Raptor gave Chapter 5 an 8, Hannah gave Chapter 6 a 10, and Jordan gave Chapter 7 an 8. So the average guest score was 8.71. So our guests, as a general rule, it seems, liked the series better than us.
Because whenever we have an episode come out, we're like, let's bring someone on the show who hated this to talk about.
Yeah, well, there's only 1 week where our guests gave a lower score than the three of us, and that was Chapter 5. Star Raptor gave it an 8, whereas I gave it 8.5, and you two gave it a 9. So there's Star Raptor coming in with the hard hitting.
He's such a negative guy.
Yeah.
He's always hating on everything.
Now, the other people we asked for scores out of 10 was the audience. We asked the audience during for their scores.
Wait,
and
did you was this spring break, Dominic? Up again?
I had to work last Sunday and I had nothing to do.
There
it was
we
the
go. That
Super Bowl
explains
Sunday.
it.
And I was terrified that someone would walk up behind me and see me watching our show.
Watching
And
yourself
be
on
like,
YouTube.
yeah.
Oh my god.
Fortunately, nobody did. But
funny.
so our audience
So
gave the average score from our audience across the season was an 8.24. So again, the audience liking it a lot. Just under the two of you and a little above where I found it.
So it sounds like between. Wait, are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do the massive sum of everything?
I mean, continue.
Because I was about to say, it sounds like we're like a little bit above an 8 when you average everybody's scores.
The precise number is 8.29.
And then you'd have that
Wow.
one. That makes sense. Which again, what was mine?
Yours was 8.29. You were right in the middle. You
Right
got
in the middle. I was.
You were it. You were it.
So what does this mean? This means that I'm the most accurate reviewer of Star Wars. Second, haters. There are a lot of people in the chat. I saw y'all. I saw you, George, in the chat every week saying, "Stop complaining, Chris." I saw that. I called it.
Yeah. The highest rated episode across everybody was episode 2, chapter 2.
Wow.
The average score across everybody was 9.13. And believe it or not, the lowest scored episode, chapter 1, 7.38.
Wow.
It's sort of like the biggest fluctuation was in there.
Expectation.
Yeah, I guess if you're wondering the episode that people you might have assumed would be the highest rated, which would be chapter 6, is the second highest rated at 8.96. That might be where I'm looking at it. I think that's the week where there was the biggest discrepancy between the hosts and the audience, because I think we as a general rule liked that one better, like by a whole point more than the average score in the audience. Because remember, that was the week that it was 3 10s out of 10 and 1 9.5 out of 10, just to screw with the system. So
Yeah.
there it is. Yeah, 8.29. That's the average score from the Star Wars Underworld listeners
Fascinating.
and hosts alike.